Welcome, everyone, to a community discussion on The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I'm so excited about this. I read this book a long time ago, or I've been reading this book and savoring this book, and so I'm so excited to nerd out with you all today. The purpose of our gathering today is to explore Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, uncover how its principles can inspire us to create a better world of work by embracing creativity as a way of being. We're trying to foster innovation, authenticity, and connection in our professional and our personal lives, and reflect on how these ideas can transform the future of work. So, session disclaimer, this is a community-led event, not a culture amp event. So, we recognize that there can be some sensitive conversations that happen, as a result, make folks uncomfortable, but we are committed to creating an inclusive environment to have these bold conversations. So, we welcome your feedback. Let us know if and how we can improve as we go throughout all of this. If we haven't met, my name's Jessie Jacob. I am a Senior Community Manager here at Culture Amp. I run our Culture First Global Chapters program. This book club chapter is one of 100 now global chapters hosting in-person and virtual events that relate to, how to make work not suck so much is the gist of it, is what I've been telling people, our people. So if this is your first Culture First gathering and you're like, who are you and what is it you say you do here? We are a group of people around the world united in the shared belief that a better world of work is possible. And I like to say, by golly, we are willing to do something about it. We have 5 core principles that we are going to ask you to embody today. The first one's around fostering belonging and acceptance, just making sure people feel seen, valued, and appreciated for showing up and being themselves. We ask that you have the willingness to reflect and grow. Yes, we're trying to transform the future of work, but that goes back to our organizations. But ultimately, that starts with us being the change we want to see in the world. We ask that you have the courage to be vulnerable, whatever that looks like, playing with your edge of vulnerability so that we can create more trust and psychological safety with one another on this mission. We ask that you put your learning into action. We hope that you hear some amazing nuggets of wisdom today and are able to apply them into the way that you live, into the way that you work. And lastly, connection inside, business outside, which is just a fancy way of saying that in this container, we ask that you connect first as a human being. And if that leads to you all doing business later and collaborating in that capacity, that's cool. We want that to happen. But like hardcore sales and networking is not the primary purpose of the gathering today. All right, so we're going to hear from some folks today to share their perspective on the book. These 3 for sure are going to be sharing, and then we'll obviously open it up to others. But Darcy, Spencer, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Naina. I'm very excited to hear from you all and get your POV on this book. And so here's the agenda. We'll have a check-in. We'll talk. I've broken down some of the principles, whether you've read the book or not. You'll hear from our featured speakers, and then we'll open it up for everyone to kind of share with one another. That's the gist of this next hour today. So would love if you would be willing to participate in this Slido poll. So pull out your phone, scan this QR code, or go to slido.com and enter in this poll code. But just curious, getting a pulse check on, have you read the book? Have you started it? Have you read it cover to cover? Not at all. Where are we? And there, of course, this is very okay if you have not read the book, and that's awesome. I'm very grateful that you're here and you're still going to be able to take away some things. I'm sure of it. So awesome. Okay, so most people have started it. I personally started it, haven't read it all the way through, and I've been reading the audiobook. I've been like savoring it. It's so like comforting and peaceful. It's read by him. So that I've enjoyed. Okay, awesome. Next question for you all. Why did you choose to join today's book club? I love that, Rachel, you listen to the audio book before you sleep. Seriously, it's so comforting. It's my life philosophy. Oh, Sounds interesting. The book is my Bible. This is awesome. I can't wait to hear more from you all. I'm feeling that way too. I'm feeling like this is becoming my life philosophy. Want to hear different perspectives on how the book resonated with other people. Awesome. Oh, it's been on your desk. This is awesome. I'm awesome. I'm glad that you're here. Okay. Very cool. Yeah, the folks that he has worked with, the artists that he's worked with, are that's just bonkers. All right, my last question for you all, checking in. What's one word that best describes how you feel about the word creativity? Just curious. Kind of a doozy of a question. Freedom. Ooh, essential, life, imagination, alive, aspirational. Yeah, important and undervalued. Yes. Unleashed. It's the essence of who we are. It's beautiful. Cool. How fun. Ooh, source. What a powerful word. Everything. I'm digging this. Thank you so much. Unable to join the Slido since you can either scan this with your QR code or that's okay. We're this is the last question we're checking in on. But wow, okay, thank you all for sharing all of that. Very cool. I'm just gonna like kind of casually breeze through some of the principles of the book. And when I mean I'm going to do this, I mean ChatGPT gave me these principles. So I was like, hey friend, have you heard about Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act? So high level, if you haven't read the book, I'm gonna just share a few of the like key principles, and then I'll hand it over to our speakers to share their thoughtful takeaways from the book. So one key principle is that creativity, everyone is creative, whether you're like a traditional artist or not. It's a natural part of being human that we can be cultivated in all aspects of life. Like many of you shared in that poll, it's like everything we do, it's life. It's so I appreciated seeing all of that. The artist's perspective, viewing the world through the lens of an artist, involves observing details, finding beauty, connecting deeply with experiences, really having this like keen sense of presence. Embracing uncertainty, creativity thrives in the unknown. It's about exploring without needing all the answers up front. Tuning in, Rick Rubin talks a lot about like meditation and mindfulness and like being really receptive to the world around you, and this idea of like being able to listen and observe your external world to find inspiration. The creative process is cyclical, not linear, and we need time to rest and reflect. And it's not just like an always on thing, and embracing the cycle of all of that. Letting go of perfection and how that can hinder your creativity, and the focus should be on authentic expression rather than flawless execution. He talks a lot about there's so many amazing pieces of art that never make it out into the world because it can be hard for people to be able to release their work and let go of this idea of perfection. Curiosity over judgment, having openness and avoiding, judgments or ideas and outcomes of what things should be. Embracing constraints, this idea of like having rules and some boundaries for creativity and innovation can force you to think outside the box. Trusting the process, kind of going back to that like cyclical piece. Collaborating with the universe. I think this is many of you kind of talked about that, like someone wrote source, that I would kind of put that into the same category, which is around collaborating with the world force around you and the collective energy and how we're all connected to one another. The power of stillness, tying back to that idea of like listening and being tuned in, and how we need silence in order to recharge and allow these new ideas to emerge. art as a service. The ultimate purpose of creativity is to share something meaningful with others, connecting and contributing to the world, and how our everyday habits and things like journaling and meditation and simply just showing up are very foundational to our sustained creativity. I just took a couple notes of like a few quotes that I jotted down in my Notion board that I was like, oh, what things resonated for me? This quote, living life as an artist is a practice. You're either engaging in the practice or you're not. I love that so much. This has personally been something that I've been focusing on. Our calling is to make works to the best of our abilities. Sometimes they'll be applied and awarded, and sometimes not. And if we second guess our inner knowing to attempt to predict what others will like, our best work will never appear. I thought that was so beautiful. Like optimizing for you putting in your best effort rather than optimizing for like, how will this be received? And are other people going to like this? Oh, and I had one other quote in here, which was no longer in my slide deck. All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna stop talking so you all can hear from our amazing speakers. I know Darcy and maybe Naina, if you want to go first, and since I know it's late for you, Darcy, if you're comfortable with that. Okay, cool. But hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. Excited to hear your takeaways.
Yeah, no, hi. Yeah, I'm based in Berlin, so the time differential is quite significant. But no, it's just pronounced Nana. So I grew up in
Oh,
Copenhagen.
Nana, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I grew up in Denmark, so I kind of just anglicized it by virtue of having to pronounce it many times in Hindi, which is like the original name. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make it Nana, and it's super international and it's easier. So yeah. Um, so I thought I would do a little bit of an intro about myself to start with, and then kind of delve into the topics a little bit. Yeah. So let me just bring up my notes real quick.
Are you
So what did I?
comfortable if I spotlight you to everyone?
What does that mean?
Like, like this.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
I just feel like it's dark over here because like it's obviously getting dark these
No
days. It's
problem.
winter, so it's not gonna look like super sharp, but hopefully people can see me.
No problem.
No, so basically, yeah. As I said, I'm Nana. I grew up in Copenhagen and I studied in London. I studied at UCL in London, psychology. So obviously these kinds of topics are quite interesting in general for me. But yeah, I studied at UCL. I did my I started a career path quite corporate, I guess I want to say. Like I worked in management consulting at Accenture and then transitioned into a smaller firm called Berger Partners. So that was very much my sort of corporate, like professional identity of being kind of, a consultant. And then I don't know, I guess over time I sort of realized like maybe I kind of want to do something more creative. I ended up sort of founding a startup called Abrigo Studio. And yeah, I realized like I think I had more of an interest in sustainability and an interest in kind of trying to create something of my own, which basically, yeah, resulted in me having a startup of my own. And that kind of opened the door, I guess, to creativity. And that's why it's interesting to me now. So basically, yeah, like I started writing freelance basically for a tech startup. And I don't know, it was just kind of perfect because I used to write when I was younger and always got really good feedback on it. But then when you get a chance to actually be a professional writer, it's like amazing. It feels like you're actually able to like do something you're really passionate about. So I started writing for this tech startup freelance, and then I got into basically something that combined two of my like loves, like writing and fashion as well. So I was writing for this company called High Stability, which is kind of like Hype Beast or Dazed and Confused, if people know that publication. It's like about trends and fashion and media and culture. So yeah, so basically got a chance to write full time, professionally, and it was just one of those things where I was like, I don't know, I think this book has been on my radar for the last year, and I was like, it just encapsulates basically that journey that I've taken of being like more open to the creative path and more like willing to follow those impulses. So yeah, hopefully also hoping to hear from others how their takeaways are, but I don't know, I think there's a lot of things, there's so many themes in there that just resonated like super well. I did a LinkedIn post where I was like, I also called it the Bible of creativity because it's so like it's deeper than like just a book on creativity. It's not talking about it from a psychological standpoint or just like cognitively what it is. It's really like philosophical almost. So I don't know, some of the things that I thought like personally really resonated was like the sensitivity topic. He sort of talked about how like It's kind of like you have antennae in the world, right? So if you're sensitized to the world, you're not desensitized, you're actually like present and interacting. You have a different relationship, right? And you're actually able to digest information and reflect it back in a way that actually is meaningful. And I think that's one of those things where I was like, he worded it so well. And I'm also listening to the audiobook. So I was like, okay, like it's so meaningful when you hear it from his own voice. You're like, you just sense what he's trying to talk about. So for me, that was so amazing, like that concept, because I think sometimes sensitivity is seen as a weakness, and I actually think it's such a strength because you're actually able to voice certain things in the culture that aren't always allowed to be voiced, and you're able to put things out in the world that then others also resonate with. So I think another theme that came up for me was this thing of like, I think it was a quote of like, the personal becomes universal and the universal becomes personal. And that was just like, oh, it was such a moment for me, because I was like, I don't know. I think sometimes we're scared, right, to share our most vulnerable things because we're like, oh, what if it gets received badly? But actually, often it's like those are the works of art that we love the most, that are like just raw, like real life experiences. One of the things that comes to mind is Eat, Pray, Love, for example. It's like an examination of Liz Gilbert's entire, dissolution of her life. And she just writes it so well and convincingly, and so many people resonated with her journey. So I think it's that thing, something so personal to you can actually be such a guidepost for someone else. So I think those are the things that resonated with me in the start. Like I think the sensitivity, the personal becomes universal. Um, and yeah, just that kind of concept of being co-creating, right? Like you're co-creating with your circumstances and with other people. I think that's super exciting. So those are some of the takeaways. I don't want to go over for too long.
That was awesome. Can we either come off mute or give Nana a reflection or some love, whatever that looks like? Thank you so much. I'm glad you called out that quote. That was awesome. It's beautiful. All right, handing it to you, Darcy.
All right. Well, I'll just say I was the person who shared that I like to think of this book as like it's just my life philosophy in a lot of ways. And actually even 16 years ago, I heard this. There was a singer-songwriter, her name's Lizzie West, and she had this quote that I just fell in love with. And she said, if you don't create your own reality, your reality will create you. And it's become my just in that space, like it became my Instagram handle, create your own reality. It became a place that I launched, and I said, well, I want to do that. I was like, yeah, I want to create reality. And I created a space for people to come together and create. And it was a monthly program, and I had it, this was 16 years ago. I had different nonprofits that I hosted, and we had just that idea of whatever you're working on, whatever you're creating, come together and let's create. And there would be somebody who was working on their taxes next to somebody who's like mending their shirt, next to somebody who's just like coloring in a coloring book. And I was like, I just want to be around this. And I feel like this book is that like call to it, that like like from I got a chance to listen to all of it. I had some travel and stuff, and it was just like whatever the audio equivalent of like trying to underline every word. It was like that, and there was this one quote that I was like, oh, that's something I want to like really highlight and share. And I listened to so much more of it. I couldn't find where it was. I even went back and listened to it again, but I was pulling up the book to buy it to give as a gift, and I was scrolling through, and the quote I was thinking of was like listed there, and so I'll share the quote. So it's like this book just has this kind of like, it's not just flirty, it's like it's going to get you kind of a book. And the quote that I loved was, if you know what you want to do, you do it. That's the work of a craftsman. If you begin with a question and use it as a guide, to guide an adventure or discovery, that's the work of an artist. And then the surprises along the way, you can expand your work and even the art form itself. And I think I started to use that idea of an adventure of discovery for myself of, can I create my own reality? Can I really embody that and think about that instead of seeing this path as an artist, as a road, but something I'm just living and breathing. And a bit of background about me, I realized I just jumped right in because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can talk about this. I'm so excited. And I'm just like, so I work at a engineering and construction company as a career engagement consultant in like our talent management space. So I really get to help people create their reality in terms of their next job or position. And And I'm also a trainer with Inner Matrix Systems, which is a personal mastery system for high achievers. It's really about rewiring your nervous system through thought patterns and emotions. And so when I look back at that seed of really kind of getting into a lot of what this book is about, is this idea that creation starts with inside us. Like everything you see in your world in front of your view right now existed in someone's head. And I think being able to kind of get inside of understanding and seeing your life as something you're creating, it starts to look like this. And so there was a friend of mine who shared this analogy and had shared it with me this day that I started reading the book, and I was just like, it just was such a great reflection of this book that I want to share the analogy of, like, when you really are showing up as a creator, you begin to just feel like you're that cotton candy stick and you're just sort of like moving your hand around holding a paper tube, but suddenly it just starts to attract and you just are amassing this reality out of nothing. And I'm seeing all those head shake. Yes, it's like that kind of feeling when you really embrace this creator aspect. And I think like that's the top regrets of the dying, right? Is that they didn't exist as a creator. And so this book has just given you so many different richness to think about how to do that. So I will wrap that up with there and hand it back because I can't wait to hear more what people have to say about this.
Oh, I love it. Can we either come off mute, or if you can't, give Darcy some love and the reactions in the chat, whatever. Thank you, thank you. Woo, woo, woo. Love that. The cotton candy. You're just attracting. You're just collecting. It's so good. Um, I'm not sure if Lily, you want to share, but want to create space for you to go, my friend. And I don't think Spencer was able to make it. So okay, before we open the floor, I just like my own ramblings. I didn't come prepared to share my own kind of takeaways of this. I was just like, putting together slide decks of important principles and chatting with ChatGPT. But something that really resonated for me was around this idea of like we are all connected to one another. There's a collective consciousness, and that I may have an idea for something, Darcy may have an idea for something, and those may be very similar ideas. And it's almost like a birthing of the idea. Like someone's going to deliver that birth baby, that idea baby. And I just thought that was so interesting. And I honestly feel like the way that I work has evolved when I've taken on the mindset of I am a creator. And it feels different. Like energetically, the work that I'm doing feels different and it feels more enjoyable, to be honest, which has been fun. And um, this idea of like, I used to feel really afraid to post on LinkedIn and used to get really like intimidated by it. And now, if any of you are following me, I'm just like, there's a typo here. This is messed up. Like, I'm like, whatever. If it's 90%, 80% of the way there, I'm going to press publish and ship it. And that getting into that habit, I feel like has served me personally in my own kind of like process and also professionally, and not getting in that in my own way, I guess. So that has kind of been a really fun gift through all of this. Um, and then I'd say my last part that really resonated for me from the book, hey Margaret, is like what he was talking about around success, and how I loved his quote around success occurs in the privacy of the soul. And success has nothing to do with variables outside of yourself. And me personally, I've kind of been thinking about like my self-worth and my own identity separate from my career, and like who am I as a person? And then I kind of have realized like my soul's actually not in a rush. Like whatever this expression is supposed to be, whatever I'm supposed to get out of this time at Culture Amp or this time here on Earth will happen. And so I don't know, it's kind of just changed my pace of working and the how I work as well, which I feel like has been also an added benefit from reading this book. So anyway, those are some of my own ramblings. Opening up the floor though, in case anyone else wants to jump in and share. Yeah, Connie, hey, good to see you. I also like that
Hello.
your background is like moving.
Yeah, it's a fun one. I wish I made it myself. I stole it from Notion. I have a share and a question for the group. The share was, Darcy,
Ooh.
the quote that you shared reminded me of, I found my way into creativity through design thinking world. I used to be an engineer, and one of the like tomes of design thinking is this book called Creative Confidence. And one of the quotes in it is the Steve Jobs quote about the whole world is designed, and that means you can redesign it. And every time I would teach design thinking to high schoolers, I would always remind them of that because it gives you like creativity and design gives you this agency of there is a world that we live in that someone else designed. So that means I get that agency too. Like we are all afforded that by being existing here. Um, the question I have for folks is around how I think the like struggle I have with creativity is my work mode oftentimes goes into prioritizing efficiency, which means that I get things done really well. And that sometimes means I don't take that time to think back into let me just absorb and be and see what calls to me. How do you balance that in your day to day so you don't go all the way in one mode or the other and feel like you always have the spaciousness for creativity?
Incredible question to pose to the group. Anyone have anything that they want to share? Nana, yeah, Camry, both of you, go off. Go off, queens.
Sorry, it resonated so much, this efficiency thing, because I literally have been thinking about it myself. I think it's such a tricky one because if you want to like be effective at work, you have to kind of get things done. And so you try and organize and plan everything and make everything, as like streamlined as possible. But I definitely resonate with that concept of like, trying to slow it down a bit and pace it so that you're more in conversation and you're giving space to like what unfolds in that room. I definitely resonate with that. And I think I've kind of noticed that like sometimes like one of the things that comes to me is like letting it be interdependent. So I think a lot of times it's very individualistic the way we work. We're like, okay, this is my responsibility, let me do it. And that's of course the case. Like you have your own tasks, but it's almost like allowing for something bigger to emerge. So I've noticed certain spaces where if you just relax back a little bit and let it kind of simmer, like sometimes a solution will come from somewhere else and you'll actually get the thing that you needed from maybe another source. Like it's kind of like a chain, right? There's like an interconnected web of people and someone else might come in and give you the thing that you needed and you give something to someone else and it kind of, reciprocates like circularly. This is a very convoluted way of saying it, but basically that sense that it's not only like one-to-one transactions that we used to do, is actually like, oh, a little bit over here, a little bit over there, and you kind of you rest back a little and let things kind of unfold. I think that's very tricky for someone like me because I also like to really like get stuff done. And I think that's how work is sort of also organized. But I think when you have the opportunity in your workplace to sort of be able to do that, I think it's really amazing. So that's my thing, like, the interdependence concept, I think is the way I would frame it.
Camry, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I think for me, it requires intention and mindfulness of like intentionally carving out time to reflect, whether that's, 5 minutes a day, whether it's at the end of the week. So one thing I do is, and it's a little woo, but like every full moon and every new moon, I block my calendar and I spend time either reflecting on the past moon cycle or looking forward to the next moon cycle. And that reflection is like one, looking at the calendar and looking at all the things that I have to do, but also like just taking time to think and pause. And I think it has to be like really intentional. You have to like block out time on the calendar and honor that time. And honor yourself because there's so many things going on. Like it's so easy to prioritize things that are urgent. But I found that when I do choose to honor myself and honor that time, it has changed my life so much.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, Becky, what's up?
Hi. I agree with I don't know how to say it. Camry? Camry, what she just mentioned about taking time to reflect. I do the same thing, but instead of every full moon and new moon, I do it on a quarterly basis. And once again, it's like a reminder that my phone reminds me, like, hey, it's Q1, like pull out that document. And it's very simple. It's what's working, what's not working. And that is all. Those are the two questions that I ask myself. I write it down, I reflect on it, and I find it to be very, very helpful because instead of focusing on the to-do list, it's like, okay, what is it that I'm doing that's working? Okay, my daily meditation, my workouts, my making sure that I reach out to loved ones. And then what's not working? Maybe it's like there's burnout in the workplace, or I'm putting way too many things on my to-do list. So I completely agree that sitting down and reflecting and really taking that time for yourself is super important, even if it's only like 5 minutes.
Love that. Thanks, Becky, for sharing. Also just gonna, yeah, Kara, I'm handing it to you. I'm gonna toot Camry's horn, and you all should go follow her because she is an artist, she is an inventor, and she is an entrepreneur. She's built a really, really amazing tool where she's attached paint brushes to sounds. So there's different sound frequencies when you're painting, and that creates a different experience. I might have just butchered the way of explaining coloratura. Okay. Anyway. So anyway, wanted to share that, but over to you, Kara.
That's super cool. I was gonna say, Kimmy, too, when you talked about urgency, that resonated with me. I come from like an L&D background world, so we did like the 5 choices of extraordinary productivity, where we have like the quarters. And as soon as I like started labeling things as like, this is high importance and like really urgent versus like, this is really important, but I have like time to mull it over, like time to build it up because it's going to have a big impact. And then once I started labeling things as, oh, these aren't really that important, I don't actually have to do them, and like challenging my like need to get things done and check things off, that opened up space for then me to be able to like focus on some of the things that I could see that would make an impact and a difference, and just kind of thinking, allowing myself time to like reflect and ruminate on how to implement it, who I wanted to get involved, like what it would look like, just having more time to play with what I wanted to do, and the not so urgent, but the really important things. And really that only happens by eliminating other things that don't need to be done.
Yes, that game changer for sure. The urgent, important matrix. Yeah. Thanks, Kara. I was going to share one other thing that came up for me from your question, Connie, which was like, I don't know if any of you have read The Big Leap, but they talk about like our different, there's like your zone of incompetence, your zone of competence, your zone of excellence, your zone of genius. And oftentimes our work can get stuck in the like, I'm doing things that I'm competent at, or I'm doing things that I'm really good at and people know me for it, but it's not my inherent like genius. It's not my like creative flow state kind of work. And I think a lot about how, like, especially in my role as a community manager and my own professional development, like, how do I do work that I have to do? But then there's work that's like, how do I do work that there's like a Venn diagram of like, it meets the needs of what Culture Amp needs, it meets what our community needs, and it also meets what I personally am hoping to grow and learn and explore. And like, what are those overlapping things? And so then I build those specifically into my like into the quarterly business review. I'm like, this is one of the top 3 things I'm going to go work on. And at least one of those things I try to make sure is in my zone of genius. Like, it is something that I'm inherently like excited to learn, grow, and explore with. But anyway, I hope that's helpful. All right, Connie, any closing thoughts from you before I hand it off to Valerie? She was the next person that had her hand up.
Just perfection. Thank you, everyone, for sharing.
Love. All right, Valerie, what you got, girlfriend for the squad?
I love this book. I'm telling you, I'm on, I went to page 117, The Beginner's Mind. And so I love that part because it's talking about your childlike superpowers. Because sometimes we think we need to know everything when we get to a project. Oh, I got these skills, I got that skill. But in fact, I'm gonna go fast forward backwards to 2013 when I heard of the word future of work. And I was curious. I'm like, what is this future of work? So I should start diving in, being curious, taking classes, meeting people. I felt like a kid in the candy jar. And that's how children are. Children, they use their superpowers. My nephew, he told me what he wanted for Christmas. He said, I'm going to get it, because there's no limits. And so that's the same thing when I'm talking to people about the future of work, they always question, what is it? I don't understand it. So they like dismiss it. And so we can't dismiss things that we don't know. So we have to bring back our childlike superpowers and be curious, because this could be your next step in your career. So I want to read this part here from his book. He said, for children, each moment in time is all there is. No future, no past. I want it now. I'm hungry. I'm tired. And he said, it's all pure authenticity. So that's how we have to be, in HR or whatever role that you're playing. When you start seeing things changing, don't resist. Just go with it and be creative.
Valerie, do you feel like you're having like almost like micro mindful moments throughout the day, or what does that look like for you? Is there like a habit that you kind of tie into that, or is it more of just like kind of a mental way?
For me, like on Sundays, I have reflection time. So I have books that I read, and they're almost like micro reading. So like I'm reading a book on the 2030 workforce, things like that. And I'm curious about that. What is the workforce going to look like? For me, I'm in Toastmasters. I'm a speaker and a trainer. So I like to keep people abreast on what changes are coming. So by having that public speaking abilities, training abilities, it's easy for me to articulate that to someone in simple terms so they can understand it. And so a lot of people say, my God, you got a gift to train, because you could take something that like design thinking. I love design thinking. Someone had mentioned that. It's the best thing in the world, is to take something like process improvements, something that has a whole lot of words, and just turn that into a design where everybody understands it. And it takes you right back to that childlike mind frame, because that's what we do with children. They design, they draw, and that's how they express how they feel. And it's the same thing we do in our work.
I love that. Thank you so much, Valerie. It's the presence, it's the noticing, like noticing and being curious, and that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Adam, I'm handing it to you.
Thank you. This has been really inspiring so far. So thank you, everyone. It's a good way to start the morning here in Sydney. For me, I'm a leadership coach, and I specialize in community. And when I was doing all my training and coaching and so on, I really got deep into control and how control gets in the way of just doing good stuff, and how control is really such a I don't know if maybe poison's too strong a word, but I'd say poison to the world. And I I really believe in this philosophy of emergence. So the quote that really strikes home for me is, create an environment where you're free to express what you're afraid to express. And as a culture transformation type person, a facilitator, coach, like that's really, for me, fundamental for when I'm designing a workshop or a meeting or whatever it is, and doing it in a way where you design the environment so the ingredients are there, and then stepping back and letting the cake bake itself. And really, so for me, there's so much I took away from this book, and I've read it and then I've listened to it again. The number one thing is just letting go of control. And when we're talking about efficiency before, I think efficiency is a bit of a control type of state. It's how do you, often that gets in the way of, like, you think about all the good all the meetings where it's a really good opportunity to connect with people, to be really creative, and people prioritize getting through item action 72 on the agenda and looking at PowerPoint slide 73. Like, how do we, yeah, I don't know. I just want to, my challenge is more to the world. Like, if everyone read this book, what a better place it would be. Right? So, thank you.
Love that. Thanks, Adam. I had to write that quote in the chat. Create an environment where you're free to express what you're afraid to express. It's awesome. Catchy. TM that shit. Camry, yeah.
I might jump in, Jessie, from the same side of the world as you, Adam. I'm in Brisbane. I listened to this book about 6 months ago, so it's going to prompt me to go back and re-listen to it. And I think for me, I've always been creative, and I've come out of a corporate role where I wasn't able to be creative. So, head of HR for a large mining company, all I was doing was going from meeting to meeting, dealing with people issues until I've gone out on my own, like Adam, and being able to create stuff. It just allowed me to flourish again. So I love that quote about that. I think you stated earlier, I did note it down, Jessie, around success is in the soul. And I think that's I love that. And for me, one of the things that I work with for myself as well as for leaders is understanding where your energy comes from and how to focus it. I know it's hard when you're working in an organization and people drop meetings in your calendar and you don't have control over that. But when are you most creative? When do you feel like you can be efficient and get things done and just block half an hour out to do your emails? But then how do you cultivate the time to be creative? So I actually have a creative playlist. So there are times where I need to be creative. I'm designing a workshop and I may not be in the creative mood, and I turn on my creative playlist. So again, it's the neuroscience of training your brain to go into that mode. I have one to be efficient, which is, so I've got several playlists for different energy states that I need to be in. So hopefully that's helpful.
Can I jump in there, Jerry?
Yeah.
I love that. Nearly every big seminar or workshop I design, I choose a song and that becomes the theme, and that helps me get into that state to when I'm showing up to that. Yeah. So I really, that's cool.
Oh, that's a great one, Adam. I'm going to borrow that one too.
That's so cool. Yeah, Cherry, share the playlist in the chat.
I don't know if you like my creative playlist. It might make you depressed, but it gets me into it's a lot of, it's more for writing. So I do a lot of writing as well, and I need to get into that state. Probably not for workshops.
I love it.
I wanted to quickly jump in and respond to Adam, what you said about control and how efficiency can be a form of control. And I think at least for me, that comes from worrying about the end product, right? And so what I've learned, and actually my mentor just shared this with me last week because I was trying to figure out how do I ensure that what I'm doing is good or that I'm going down the right path. And she really said I think Darcy kind of mentioned this too, your life is your creative practice, the choices you make and the decisions you make and the paths you walk down. So even if it's not the right path, even if your end result isn't perfect, if you focus on the process of creation more than that end result, it will take you in the right direction eventually. And so in that way you were saying, Adam, that control can limit you from making, I don't want to call them bad decisions because that's a value judgment, but being so focused on control can prevent you from what did Bob Ross call them? Happy accidents, right? Happy little accidents that can lead to something beautiful that you never would have developed or thought of if you hadn't gone down that path and just kind of gone with the flow.
I love that. I've also been thinking about the people who are inherently allowing themselves more opportunities to be creative are inherently more authentic, I think. And there is a level of a sense of freedom that you can sense in other people. And I think that people are attracted to that. It's kind of what Darcy was saying about the the cotton candy analogy. But I think when people are allowing themselves more of that creative expression, it attracts more of the people who are aligned with that and who want to be more authentic themselves, because it's like, oh, that person's doing it. It's like almost like you're giving them permission to do more of that. Um, anyway, that's what was just coming up for me. But um, anyone else want to share anything that's coming up for them? Also, I had another thing I was just thinking about. You're talking about, Adam, like a song can, when you're build, like that song can build how you're, whatever it is that you're, it can influence the whatever the thing that you're creating, right? And I also think that like words are energy. So like, yes, I love using ChatGPT, and I'm also like extremely aware of like that isn't necessarily the energetic experience that I'm wanting someone to have when they read my writing. So like that's a great starting point, but I like want that to be interwoven with the things that like I would inherently say. Um but that how even like that song, using that as a foundation for the thing that you're creating might also show up into the thing that you're creating, and other people may sense that. It's like Miley Cyrus recently accepted a Grammy award, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so inspired by Dolly Parton and Tina Turner." And I was like, I totally see it. Like I see how both of those people are intertwined into who she is, you know? And so that influence can show up in your creative acts. I don't know. I'm rambling now. Kara, please stop me from talking. That would be fantastic.
I'm appreciating your rambling. Who doesn't? Miley's on my pump up playlist whenever I need to like jam up. Okay. But there was a quote that I wanted to pull out that kind of seemed, it just really stood out to me. And this also might seem a little wooey, but like whenever I see the ocean, I get like a sudden sense of like calm or relief, or like the ocean is just so powerful. And so like there was a quote that he added in there. There's a reason we are drawn to gazing at the ocean. It is said the ocean provides a closer reflection of who we are than any mirror. And I just thought that, I mean, that just like moved me hearing it. I was like, that's just one more piece of why the ocean is so powerful and like what it can give you. And you just like sink into it as like, I don't know, just many layers to that quote, and I just wanted to give a little ode to it in this talk.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's awesome. Love that so much.
Sorry, Kara, I'm curious, like when you look into the ocean, like if you see it as a reflection of yourself, like what do you see or what are you experiencing?
I think next time I do that, I'll have to like really focus it and like actually be like, what am I seeing here? Like with me in particular, instead of just, I feel like when I look at the ocean, I feel the universe and the power and the, like, it just kind of feels like the inspiration drawing through me. But yeah, next time, which is, I should have done it because I was actually visiting the ocean when I was reading the quote, and I was like, oh, um, but it's just ever changing, and it's just, there's so dark and depths that like you can't see, and there's just so much life going on inside there, and you just see the surface, and there's just so much more to it. And yeah, put me on the spot, Cammy. I don't really like talking about myself, so
Sorry. You did great. It was awesome. All right, wanting to give another moment in case anyone else wants to share. Otherwise, I'd love to just move us into closing, like how we're going to put our learnings into action. But anyone else want to share? Yeah, Darcy. Yeah.
I'll just share one more thought. It's in the cotton candy for me. That I feel like sometimes it feels funny to be, I'm a creator. She can create that when in some sense it just feels like you just took some of this and some of that and you put it together, or like in some sense it's like, well, I didn't really do anything. I just said, hey, what you're doing over there, we can do over here too. And sometimes it feels like that people kind of see even that as like a big capital C, like, oh, you're creating something, and it's like, well, I just saw what you were doing over here, and I said we could come do it over here in this space. Like sometimes it just feels like, and I think that was a point of the book somewhere in that exploration of, that you're just kind of taking something or tweaking it, or you're pulling something out, or can we do it? Can we sing it faster? Can we sing it slower? Can we, it's just like, well, I just sang it slower. That's why it felt different. I sang it with an emotion of courage versus an emotion of pain, and to me, I think that's the other part, that like being able to kind of take this value of living your life as a creator and creating is something that just also sort of, I think it helps people see that they really are creating, and it can just be those simple things like taking something, an idea, and tweaking it or borrowing it, and those kinds of things too.
Darcy, that is beautiful. I'll say one last thought, which is like, one of my thoughts I had from when he was writing was he was saying, shoot, what is it? Where was it? I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through my notes here. Oh, okay. To assume that there was a golden period and you're past it is only true if you believe that premise. And I was just thinking about like how even the premise of I'm a creator, right? Like that premise, whether you believe it or not, changes the entire way that you approach your life as a result. And so I thought that was really beautiful around like the things that we believe, whether them to be true or not, dictate our reality. And so that was what was coming up for me, Darcy, when you were sharing, of just like, well, I'm not a creator. And it's like, okay, well, but what happens if you did take that on as a belief? And like, how would that feel? What would the emotional experience of that be, whether it's true or not, So anyway, I just love that. And even the premise of like, oh, I'm past my golden period. It's like, well, if that's true, then that's what you believe, that's the reality you create. I don't know. I just really appreciated his point of view on that. Yeah, people love to say that they aren't creative. Exactly, Kara. Yeah. All right. Would love to just start to wind us down here since we only have 4 minutes. What any takeaways that are resonating for you as a result of this, and the way that you want to approach, like apply some of this to the way that you live or to the way that you work? Whether you want to share in the chat, great. If you want to come off mute, but would love to hear kind of like the potential ripple effect of this in the way that you're showing up. Yeah, Valerie.
I would say no matter what's happening in the world, such as artificial intelligence, never lose your creativeness. That's what I say. Keep that human aspect to everything that you do in your work, how you treat people, because we are not machines. Yes. And this book resonates with all that. So keep that creativity going.
Power to the people. Anyone else want to share their takeaways or how they're going to implement their learnings? Margaret, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we haven't heard from you, and I would love to hear from you.
Sorry, and I was late. Another meeting ended, and I thought, oh, I can still catch a little bit of this one. So sorry for
no
jumping.
problem.
I'm a little bit of like an imposter interloper here because I ordered the book from the library. It came up, and I haven't been able to get to the library to get it. So I thought I'm going to listen in and hear what everyone has to say about it. And it's still on hold for me at the library, and I'm going to go get it this weekend and read it. So, great to be here and hear this conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Thanks for being here, Margaret.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share? Oh yeah, The Artist's Way. Julia, forgot her last name. Julia Cameron, is that right? Yeah, great complimentary book. Good shout there, Kara. Yeah, even just the habit of the morning pages, right? Like even Rick Rubin talks a lot about like the daily habits being a important part to that. I am also going to finish reading the book. I think I want to have the physical version. I've been listening to it, and it's very comforting, but I think having like a physical copy of this would be powerful for me. So that's one of my takeaways. Yeah.
One of the only books on my shelf that I feel very good about just like flipping to a random page and just reading it. So I'm +1 on physical copy.
Yeah. Great little tip there. I love that. All right. Any other closing reflections? All right, so we're going to do a chat bomb checkout, one of my favorite things if you've been to a Culture First gathering. So would love for you to type just one word to describe how you're doing, how you're feeling here at the end of the gathering into the chat, but don't press enter yet. So type your one word to describe how you're feeling. Don't press enter. When you have your word, give me a thumbs up. And then we're all going to press enter at the same time and flood the chat. Okay. All right. Ready? On the count of 3, we're all going to press enter. 1, 2, 3, enter. Heard, energized, inspired, fulfilled, curious, calm, refreshed. Yeah, I also feel refreshed, Erica. Connected, calm. Oh, so cool. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. You all want to do a clap out? I love doing a little clap out. Okay, here's Cherry, would you be willing to clap us out? I know you know how to do this with us. All right, so what's gonna happen is Cherry's gonna count us to 3. She's gonna go 1, 2, 3. We're all gonna clap, and then the Zoom meeting's just gonna shut off. Okay. So feel free to use any of this with your teams and your meetings. So everyone come off mute if you can. We're gonna do this clap out. Again, Cherry's gonna go 1, 2, 3. We're all gonna clap together, and then the Zoom meeting's gonna come off. Okay, just thumbs up. Everyone understand what's happening? Okay. Thank you all for being here. Cheers to co-creating a more creative and better world of work. Cherry, count us to 3.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.